Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. Today we have a very special session by a very special guest, Her Grace Indira-sakhi Mataji. And today's topic is also very important, and it was so much in demand by all the devotee parents. That is raising children with the principle of simple living and high thinking. So I'm sure all of you must have already heard about Mataji, must have read about Mataji. Just a brief little introduction before we start.
हो गया KYC.
I request everyone to please kindly stay on mute mode.
लेकिन मैसेज KYC.
So Mataji is placed in Sridham Mayapur with her family. Mataji is wife of His Grace Tapan Mishra Prabhuji, and she has two daughters, very special devotees. Mataji, by her qualification, academic qualification, she has done her master's in computer science from IIT, and she has worked with various reputed companies like HCL and few more. And currently, Mataji is a part of the team of ISKCON Education Ministry, and they are doing various wonderful services in Mayapur Dham. They are conducting various conferences for all the education institute currently working under ISKCON community. And Mataji is also the author of a very wonderful and enlightening book, which is How I Achieve Real Success, which is a guide for the modern women. And Mataji is raising her kids in a very wonderful Krishna conscious way. She is teaching them and encouraging them to read Srila Prabhupada books, and this is really very great example which she has set for all of us, that her kids are already Bhakti Sastri qualified, Bhakti Vaibhava qualified at such a young age. We are really looking forward to have Mataji's association so that we can get some important tips on how we can raise our kids and how we can instill this faith in our kids regarding Srila Prabhupada books and scriptures. So thank you so much, Mataji, for being with us today. Over to you.
Hare Krishna. I'm very happy to be with all of you. I'll begin by offering prayers to Srila Prabhupada, the Panchatattva, and Lord Krishna. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunivadi Paschate Shtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, very pleased to be in the association of such nice devotees. Thank you to Vidyavati Mataji for inviting me. I saw that this series of parenting seminars has been going on for many months now, and it's really nice to see that devotees are taking this responsibility of being parents and raising their children in Krishna consciousness so seriously. So that's very nice. I'm happy to be in your association. Mataji, can you hear me clearly? Is it clear, the sound quality?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So we'll begin. And like Mataji mentioned, the topic of today's discussion is raising children with the principle of simple living and high thinking. Now, before we dive into the topic, and I will discuss with you what the seminar is about, we're going to discuss the topic itself, which is simple living and high thinking. When we consider the life that normally people are leading today, all of us, in general, people of the world, and we consider the stages of life. So I'll talk about how things are in India, since we all are more or less an Indian audience right now. That how a child is born, and then as soon as he's a little bit grown up about his future, particularly in big cities like Delhi, Bombay, it's immediately on their minds about school, which school he has to go in. And from a very young age, children are sent to classes for dance, music, speech therapies, elocution, and things that will build their confidence and allow them to express themselves coherently. So if you consider this, all this is very nice, because if the aim of the parents is that our child should be well balanced and he should have a good personality, but if we look a little deeper into why these things are done, we'll notice that the aim is not so much on the immediate development of the child. It is that where he's going next. All these are thought out steps to make the child's life a success. Their child to be successful these days. It is that, okay, he should, even to get into a good school these days, there is interview. So therefore, all these classes and so on. And I know because my mother is in a society in Gurgaon, and there are tiny children coming to her to learn English because they want to be confident in speaking in English. And again, by itself, it doesn't sound like a bad thing, but what is the aim? That, okay, so they will clear the interview to get into a school. Fine, and then what next? Then they get into a good school and they learn whatever they have to learn, and then they do the next step of getting into a good college, and then they get a good job. So all these things, again, we are in the material world, of course, everybody needs to earn a living. But if we see, it is not just to earn a living and to live peacefully. The aim is that you should improve your standard of living. If a person is of middle class, they're always aiming to be higher middle class. If somebody is already at that stage, they want to be with the elite rich people. So the aim is always that, oh, our children should do better than us. We want to give them more opportunities. So it's always about more, more, more. And, that also translates into acquiring more. So if we see in general, and I know this is how I was brought up, that it's that you must do better. We want to give you the best so that you can do better. But what is that better? That better that most people understand is a better house, a bigger house, 2 cars instead of 1. Because earlier when, in my parents' generation, everybody had a scooter. Next, everybody gets a car. Now, at least you should have 2 or 3 cars. And of course, all that hassle about parking is another thing, but that's the aim. So you want to get more cars, you want to go in a bigger society. This is the aim. However, if we look at our scriptures, this is not the aim. And we do look towards our scriptures because they give us eternal wisdom. It is not something that is coming and going from one generation to another. So what do the scriptures say about what our aim should be? So the essence of all scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam, says, Kamasya nendriya priti, labho jivate yavata, jivasya tattva jikyasa, nartho yash cheha karmabhi. The translation. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. This is what we are taught, that do better. That means enjoy your senses in a better way, much better than what your parents were able to do. But Bhagavatam says, you should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So this is what our scriptures are teaching us, that actually Human being is meant for inquiry. And why is that? Because the goal of life is, again, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, ahetu ki aprahitihata, unmotivated devotional service. Why is that? Yayatma suprasiddhati. Actually, that is the thing that will satisfy the soul. So it is not just randomly that, the scriptures are saying that you should lead this kind of life, simple life. It's also giving you the fruit of it. That is the only thing that will satisfy the soul, because then you will get the opportunity to engage in devotional service. Bhagavad Gita says, Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam, taya pahirta chetasam, vyavasatmika buddhi, samadhavna vidyate. So unless in the minds of Bhog and Aishwarya, so if you're preoccupied with these two things, that's enjoyment and opulence, then your mind cannot be peaceful. You cannot have Vyavasatmika buddhi, which is fixed intelligence, which is required for devotional service. So we understand this, that this is why simplicity is stressed, that unless we have a peaceful state of mind, our mind is cluttered with things. And then you cannot engage in devotional service. And then you cannot get the aim, which is ahetuki apratihata, devotional life which is unmotivated and uninterrupted. So this is the goal that we are aiming for. It's very different from the goal which is generally understood in today's world. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about this theme. We're going to discuss how parents need to be role models. We're going to discuss about the right association for our children, the practical engagement with this theme of simple living, and also how simple living and high thinking go hand in hand. So these are the four things that we are going to discuss. So how we talked about how these two things are very different. What the Shastras explain to us should be the goal of life, the way we should live our life, and how modern life really is. And one may think that, oh, this is for sadhus, it's for later in life, or it's for those who are really devoted. I mean, come on, I'm a family man. Do I really need to think about all these things? And if you see 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, yes, for everybody. This is Varnashram system. Every stage of life is an ashram. So even grihasthas have to practice in this way. The same principles are given, that even if you are leading a grihastha life, the minimum. You'll find this theme in Ishopnishad also, that Tena Tvaktena Bhunjita, the Ishavasya principle. Everything belongs to Krishna. Just take what you need. But how does one determine what is it that I need? It may not be the same as someone else. So that requires little intelligence, common sense, and guidance from devotees. So we should try to ascertain that. So coming to our discussion on parents being the role models. So when we're bringing up children, it is clear that we are the ones who are going to guide them. Parents play a very important role. Srila Prabhupada has particularly said that in spiritual life, the way to convey something is to teach by example. So I have two quotes here by Srila Prabhupada. One is a letter to Hiranyagarbha in 1974, which says about teaching children. First of all, you must teach by your personal example. So you yourself must chant 16 rounds and follow the regulative principles, and automatically they will do as you are doing. Then they will become strong Vaishnavas. So of course, this is in general about spiritual, and the same thing we apply for that aspect of spiritual life that we are talking about, which is simple living and high thinking. Another quote, Children's nature is to imitate. Why? Because that's how they learn, Prabhupada explains. So the first imitation begins from the parents. If the parent is nice Krishna devotee, naturally the children become devotees. And in this quote, which is a lecture given in 1972, Prabhupada stresses that do not let your children go astray. Be very careful. They will imitate you. So the onus is really on the parents first. That if we have to teach something to our children, imbibe it in your own lifestyle, in your own character. So when we are talking about simple living, you have to internalize this before you can expect your children to live by it. So if we are living in the world and they see that every 6 months fathers upgrading to the next latest model of phone, or mom is really always looking out for the sales, or really preoccupied with um, buying a Gucci bag and other things which for a devotee we consider a little unnecessary. So if they see their parents living an extravagant life, or not living an extravagant life but trying to aspire to be that way, then it is difficult to give the message of simple living to our children. So the first thing we have to do is to bring these aspects of spiritual life, which is simple living and high thinking. High thinking is always keeping the goal of life in mind, working towards it, and the practical things which we do as our daily sadhana. So if we are not practicing this principle, it's impractical to think that at some point our children will do it. And it's impractical to think that we can convey it to them at some point. Because we were discussing in one class that actually, as a parent, 24/7, you are a teacher. Because whatever you're doing, your children are learning from you. So preaching we can do to so many people outside, but to our own family, that's the real test, because they see you. They see you through your good, bad, and ugly. And of course, nobody is perfect. I mean, very few people are perfect. But if they see us striving towards that, that's inspiring for them. And if they see that we are making these changes in our life, then they will also see the value of it. So this was my first point, that as parents, we have the responsibility, as they say, to walk the talk. That if you're saying something, you should also be practicing it, because children will pick up. You cannot just speak one thing and do something else. So that means when you may get under pressure with your peer group or with relatives to sort of fit in, but then you have to see what your priorities are. When you're leading a Krishna conscious life, chances are that you are not going to fit in, because that's just how it is. Like we discussed, the world is going in a different direction to the advice that we get from the scriptures. So if we make this choice, we have to understand we are going to be different. We have to accept that. And then if we are comfortable with it, that will give confidence to our children. But if we are trying to, lead this double life where we tell the children one thing, but we do something else, that's confusing for them. So the next thing was about giving the right association to our children. Again, taking lessons from Bhagavatam, we see that Narad Muni in his previous life was the son of a maid servant, and he got the association of some very exalted sadhus who came and they stayed during Chaturmas, and this little boy was serving them. Because of that association and service, he perfected his life. He took the loss of his mother. His mother was bitten by a snake and left her body, and he was calm about it. And he just started to travel around the world and then absorbed himself in Krishna consciousness. So this is an example of how a child benefited from good association so much. We also have the example of Vena, who was the son of a very pious king, Anga, But as he was growing up, his mother's side was not pious at all. She came from the dynasty of death personified. And this boy was so cruel because of that association that he used to kill innocent animals in the forest. And then he actually started killing his own friends. He would mercilessly kill them as though they were animals. He was so cruel. People used to say, "Oh, there comes cruel Vena." To the extent that finally King Anga left, and the whole story is very dramatic of what happens with Vena. So, an example of how disastrous bad association can be. Now, what can we do as children, as parents for our children? How can we monitor their association? Because we don't want to be very heavy. And there's this whole concept of give your children freedom, allow them to make up their own minds. Well, that's not what Shastra teaches us. It does tell us that we have the responsibility as parents. So I would say, even in a modern setup, it's good as parents to know uh, what is the peer group that our children have, and try to, there are various ways. When you go to school, you can see what kind of children there are in the neighborhood who all are playing with your children, and keep an eye. And then it's not a bad idea to discuss with your children that, oh, this so and so person is very well behaved and you should be in their association. And just being coming from a rich and affluent background is not a disqualification. There are many people who have opulence, but they're brought up with values. So if we are able to see that there are children like that, we can encourage our children that, look, they have such good values. Even though they have a lot of material opulence, they are not proud about it. On the other hand, there may be some people who have little opulence, but they really like to show off and all. So we would like to steer our children away from such children. Or if there is no choice, there's a small group and he's always playing with them, then at least tell him that, okay, you're playing with them, fine, but don't accept their values. So if we give very strong values to our children, which is that we show by example and also talk to them that this is what our scriptures tell us and this is the value system that we want to practice in our family, then chances are that they will automatically go and become friendly to such people, such children. And even if they are friendly to the other sort of children who are not very suitable, they'll learn to keep a distance. But my point is that we should be aware of the association that our children keep. And we should be careful if we see that our children are suddenly coming up with a lot of demands, that the most common being, all my friends have a phone, why don't you allow me a phone? Or I have this phone, but I want the next model because everybody has a fancier phone than me. So we have to see as parents where we want to draw the line and explain to the children. Just because we can afford it doesn't mean we give in to all their demands, or to feel that unless we do it, we are not being good parents, that, oh, they are embarrassed in front of their friends. No, I mean, the friendship should be more than just material things that you have. Another way is to keep in touch with other devotee families, because chances are that devotees understand. They don't want to have increase their material requirements. So most devotees do tend to lead a moderate lifestyle. It's not very opulent, over the top. And so if we are in association of similar families, that helps, because children see, a lot of devotees don't have a television at home. So they see that it's not just my family, it's other devotee families also, and they benefit from not having it. It's not unnatural like that. So that's a good point to keep in mind. Also, there are renunciants in our movement, so we should encourage our children to observe how they are leading their life, and they're very happy about it. If we see the sannyasis who are visiting our congregation temple, and they give lecture, and they sometimes share how they left everything for Prabhupada, and they're not regretful about it. They're leading such a simple life. Most of them don't have bank balances, or their disciples handle everything. They're just depending on Krishna. So that's a practical example in front of our children that simple living works. Simple living combined with high thinking gives so much happiness in the heart. So those things give positive association to our children. So we should expose them to this. If we can, we should get our children to serve these devotees. And we were fortunate when we were in Kuwait, our house was the ISKCON center. So many sannyasis used to come and stay. And the children could see their daily routine, day after day, how they're getting up, chanting, the whole day they're preaching, writing. They're just absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And these are elderly devotees, some of them. One sannyasi who came, he was always fasting Nirjala for um, Ekadasi. And he came on Ekadasi day to our house after a long flight. And when we offered some Ekadasi prasad, he said, "No, I always fast Nirjal." And he went ahead and gave the whole program, Bhakti Vaibhava Maharaj. He was elderly even at that time, few years, about 10 years ago. And he gave the class with resounding kirtan. And we could see this is spiritual strength. So these are very good examples for our children, and we should encourage them to be in such association. So we talked about parents being role models. We talked about our children having other role models and good association. And we also want to talk about how it practically works. I mean, yes, okay, we are talking about it should not be this. Do not let them get involved with a lot of material possessions, opulence. But how does one really live a simple life? I mean, how do you do it from day to day? So it's no different. It's not a different thing. You still do everything that one is supposed to do. Children also have recreation time, but it's different in the sense that you don't want the recreation to be what is generally accepted, like a lot of they're just sitting in a corner, they're on the device all the time. Recreation can also be done like the traditional way. Go out and play. If not, go out and play a board game, or just do something creative, especially in the sense of something artistic like drawing, coloring. Children love that at all ages. That's really good for girls. For boys, they can also have things where they construct things. They love doing that. So have projects where they're making things. It's always a good idea to combine spiritual activities with, because we want to keep them engaged. So get them involved in servicing the altar. Arudha Mataji gives this example for her boys, how she always made deity worship a big part of their day. And that's very nice. You're engaging in direct devotional service, and it's also something to keep them busy. Children always like doing that. So things like that. The point is, again, it comes back to how the onus is on the parents to find these kind of engagements. So it's a big responsibility when we're bringing up our children in Krishna consciousness. It's the easiest thing in the world to hand them a device, sit them in front of the TV and do your own thing, which may even be Krishna conscious activities. It could be your sadhana, it could be preaching activities. It's very easy to do these things. It's much harder to find positive engagements for our children. But we must do it for their own sake and for our own sanity, because it may seem easy in the beginning, but mode of passion, it will be bitter in the end. Later, when you try to see, oh, why is my child like that, and why does he have no interest in Krishna consciousness? Well, it starts in these little things, and our life is not divorced from our spiritual life. Spiritual life is our life, and that's how we have to make it for the children. And there's a wonderful quote by Srila Prabhupada where he says that austerities should be fun. So this is the expertise that we have to build up. How? Yeah. If our children, if they are not spoilt by an artificial standard of sense gratification at an early age, children will turn out very nicely as sober citizens because they have learned the real meaning of life. If they're trained to accept that austerity is very enjoyable then they will not be spoiled. So we do think that, okay, they should take this austerity, but we shouldn't just, make it seem like it's such a big thing. We should present it in a very attractive way. Just like that verses there, param drishta nivartate, that they will leave something which is not good if you give them something better. That if the child is eating dirt, you give him a gulab jamun. So if you make Krishna consciousness so nice that they're eager to do it, like I was learning shlokas with my children a few years back. I had to learn Bhakti for Bhakti Vaibhava, Srimad Bhagavatam shlokas, and I was overwhelmed by it because they're so big. But we started doing it together, me and both my daughters, and they were really young at that time. But we would sit every morning, this was during Kartik few years ago, and we would take one verse and we would do part of it. So I would chant, then they would chant, then they would chant. And I would say, okay, let's see who learned it. Invariably, the children learn faster than us. So it was really nice for them. Oh, look, we can learn better than mama. And they were very encouraged. Every day we were doing one shloka and we would read the meaning. Then we would go next day, that shloka plus another shloka. And you wouldn't believe it. Within a few weeks, we had learned all that I had to learn for Bhakti Vaibhava, which is about 50 shlokas. And all three of us knew it, not just me, but the children knew it better than me. So that was really nice. And we were recording it also. So some days we would record it so that we can play it back. We can play it when we are doing something else. So there are many things that we want our children to do, which are very important for them. That is reading Shastra, chanting on the beads, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, learning shlokas, all these things. But we have to present it in such an attractive way that they don't feel like it's a drag. And to some extent, even especially chanting is a thing that even grown-up devotees struggle with. So not that we make it frivolous, they do understand the significance of it. And there may still be times when they say, oh, why do I have to do it? And then I would tell the children, outside parents, they put their children through so many things in terms of extra studies, extra this, extra that, because they feel that is good for them. So the parents are doing what is good for the child, and you should accept it. And then you will find that it benefits you. So sometimes we do have to just tell them, just do it, but in a nice way. We also encourage them when they do something, encourage them even more, and be there by their side. Do not give them tasks and think that they can just do it, because grown-ups struggle with it. These are children. So we have to always keep them encouraged. So that was about positive engagement and always making very attractive for our children. The last thing, which is also this is the thing you should mention first, a nice note to end the presentation on, which is that these two things go hand in hand. You cannot have simple living without high thinking. In the sense, you will not get the benefit. Our idea is not to just have a peaceful life. That is good. Of course, mode of goodness is always better than passion and ignorance, but that will not bring you to the ultimate goal. So if a person is leading a very peaceful, calm life, but he is to progress spiritually, then it doesn't really serve its purpose. So while we are encouraging our children to accept austerity or to lead a plain life, we also have to tell them why. We have to give them the philosophy behind it, because that is the real backbone of this movement, actually. And that will actually give them the confidence, because they know why they are doing what they are supposed to do. So here I want to take the example of Rishabh Dev. who is emperor of the whole world. He is actually an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he gives instructions to his sons. Wonderful instructions. Every verse is a gem. So we have to understand that this is not a person who is due to force of circumstances living a simple life. No, he's emperor, and so are his children going to be. But still, he teaches them to accept austerities. Rishabhavacha nayam deha deha bhajam riloke kashtam kaman rahate vidbhujamaye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhaye yasmad brahma sokyam tvanantam. So he tells his children, he tells his sons very strong words. My dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. So, this is not what our children should be doing. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. Okay? That now he's saying, this is not what you should do. What you should do is engage in austerity. Why? Because then you will get to attain devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified. And when one attains this position, he attains eternal, blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So, in one verse, everything is there. Because in the end, he says, why should we do this? Your heart will be purified and you will get eternal, blissful life. So, this is ideal father. That's why these personalities are there in Srimad Bhagavatam, because they explain to their children in this way. Accept austerities. Why? Because it has such a wonderful result. Accept austerities for devotional service. And when you do that, eternal blissful life. So very nice instruction by Rishabdev. We would like to accept it in our heart, and we would like to convey this to our children in such a way that they accept it. Hare Krishna, I would very much like to hear your comments, questions, feedback on the topics that we discussed regarding simple living and high thinking. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for such a useful session for all of us. I'm sure everybody has been benefited a lot, and there are certain questions in the chat section. I'll read them to you.
Yes.
Mataji, 2-3 parents have asked a similar question, that how can we make the austerities enjoyable for the kids? If you can please elaborate a little, how can practically we can follow this?
Yeah, so what worked for us was to firstly do it together as a family. That helps. Also to bring other children together. Like when I was, when my children were younger, for many years, I used to have like a Sunday school. We were in the Gulf countries, so on Fridays or Saturdays, that you get the other children together and have a Krishna class where you do these things together. You may chant a bit, you may learn a shloka, you read scriptures together, they can do a drama, something like that, and it ends with opulent prasadam. So it's like a party for them, a Krishna party every week. That's enjoyable. So they are learning things. Ordinarily, this would be like an austerity, sitting down, learning shlokas or chanting or things like that. But then you bring children together and you do it together. Or if you don't have children, then as a family, you do it. Even alone, as a mother, that when I was explaining Bhagavad Gita to my children, so I had made them make a little notebook where we write a shloka, then they have some questions to answer, they do a drawing related to that. So whatever you are trying to do with the children, be innovative. And it helps when we are involved in it. That's what I feel, that parents' involvement helps a lot. So uh, we do a lot for the children for other things, like in academics and so on. We do pep them up that chalo beta kar lo, bas abhi 10th का एग्जाम है, फिर 12th का है, हो जाएगा, इसके बाद तुम्हें अच्छी लंबी ब्रेक मिलेगी. We are always using tools to encourage them. As parents, we do this all the time. So if we make something a priority, Krishna will give us the intelligence. He will inspire us that what can I do to make it more attractive. Although one practical thing is prasadam. It always works with children. That whatever thing that they find austere, if it's combined with wonderful prasadam, it always helps. So that's something, doing in association of other children, that works. So those are a few things. But if there's a specific situation, I can give specific advice how to do it. Like I told you about learning shlokas, and about chanting also. We started to one summer when we asked them that, do you want to now chant 16 rounds, because they were chanting, but it was not a fixed regulated number. So they said yes, and then we started doing it. All of us would sit and we would chant together. So do it in a group, do it as a family. Always helps. Encourage them. This is wonderful. Can you imagine? Now you're chanting 16 rounds, and once they start, they want to continue, because they know this is the right thing. It's only our mind which is preventing us from doing it. In their heart, they know this is the right thing. I can see some questions about fasting. Can I answer that?
Yes, Mataji.
So again, in fasting, we do it step by step. When our children are very small, we do opulent Ekadasi fasting. Even Ekadasi is like make lots of things, sabudana vada and French fries and like that, so that they are fasting. But again, we found that as the children were growing up, then they understand the significance of fasting, that it's, yes, of course, it's an austerity to refrain from one kind of food, but also you want to understand that it's for more engagement in devotional activities. So if we are still engaged in cooking and then eating heavy food, digesting that, it sort of defeats the purpose. So it's okay in the beginning, but we want to gradually go to a more austere standard. At the same time, then that Ekadasi day, when you are having less prasadam, make sure again you sit together, you can see memories of Srila Prabhupada, make that day special. Do devotional activities which you don't ordinarily do. Watch one of the plays done by Bhaktivedanta players or by the devotees in Bombay. So some devotional activities like that, which are also fun for the children, and fill the Ekadasi like that. So it's something to look forward to.
And then
now, when we started with the Ekadasi, it was like this when they were small, very opulent prasadam. And now for many months, all of us did Nirjal for every Ekadasi, just Nirjal. First few Ekadasis were a little difficult, then we just got used to it. And then, it's the morning, oh, how are you feeling? And when we break our fast with the watermelon juice, it's nice. So it's interesting because we are comparing notes. How are you feeling now? And how are you feeling? And things like that. So it's good to up the standard also.
Same with the devotees
Hare
asking
Krishna.
about waking up early.
Oh yes, waking up early. I'm glad that question came up because that's something very close to my heart. It is something we have as practiced practically always, but I see that it's a problem for a lot of devotees. Now, what happened? We were also in a situation where congregation programs were very late. But you know what? We opted out of them because we thought that this principle we don't want to change. We do want to have a regulated morning program or morning sadhana. And how we manage getting up early is sleeping early, all of us. So because if you're not, again, as parents, if you're not doing it, although we don't need that much sleep and we do have other engagements, so sometimes it's not possible for parents. But what we were doing was that 7 o'clock lights out in my house, like 7:30 is late, because that's how the children will get up at 3:30 or 4, for Mangal Aarti. So you switch off all the lights, everybody gets into bed. And children, they're usually so tired, they fall asleep immediately. So as parents, even if you have some work afterwards, like mothers want to finish cleaning up the kitchen before sleeping, or father has to work on something on his computer for presentation, preaching, whatever, that can be done later. But always give priority to putting your children to bed on time, and then they will wake up on time. That's how it. And usually I would also be so tired. It's a good thing to retire early, because that morning time is precious. You don't want to lose out on that morning time. That's probably the only time you'll get if your children are going to regular school. Because apart from that, they have school, then they have the other activities. If you don't want to cut down on their playing also in the evening, then where's the time for Krishna consciousness? If you make it a weekly thing, it's a little hard. This is the time, this is the age when they should be absorbing a lot more. So yes, by all means, change your lifestyle. Change your lifestyle. That's your duty as parents. You have taken this responsibility and you must do it. If one parent inevitably gets late, at least the mom should try it. Or if the mom is working late, the father. One of the parents should be with the children, make sure they sleep on time. That's important. Very important for a spiritual life.
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much for that answer. Mataji, there are situations when the mother or maybe the father, a single parent is trying to inculcate these values in the kids, and maybe the other partner is not a devotee or the in-laws are not
Yes.
devotees. In such
Yes.
situations, and maybe probably if they are from an opulent background, it becomes difficult to teach the child because they have other examples as their parent only, or maybe as their other relatives who are not following this practice.
Correct. Correct. Good point. Good point. So you do the best you can. You do the best you can. And you talk to them in a diplomatic way. You don't want to criticize the near and dear ones, but you teach your children to see from the eye of Shastra that the people who are living a very opulent life also have the responsibility to maintain that opulence, and that often brings with it its own stress. So, not to criticize anybody, but just that they should be observers, that you can see this. So, even if one parent is very calm, peaceful, not affected by, what the world, which direction the world is going in, they will pick up on that. They will see in the long run that, look, this person is benefited from this attitude because they're peaceful, they're fixed in their regulated duties or their sadhana. The children will pick up on that. So even if one parent is doing that, it will have a positive influence. Of course, that influence may be negated because they're getting so much other influence. What can you do? Just do the best you can. It will have its effect. Children are intelligent. They can see, if you discuss these things a little bit, they can see in the long run who is, sort of peaceful and who is living according to Shastra and what benefit it has given them. So just do the best. And sometimes circumstances change. With your own attitude, you can change the attitude of other people. So be hopeful. Discuss with the children. Discuss these points with the children. Give them your positive association. Whoever is the one person who believes in these things, give them your association. It will have its effect. Don't be discouraged.
Mataji, thank you. Mataji, there are two further questions regarding rising early. One is that at what age should we try to wake up kids at in Brahm Muhurta time, and the second question is that if the child is single, the child does not have any siblings, and if the child is waking up early and the child is small, he or she might not be chanting much. So how can we engage the child while we are chanting ourselves if the child also wakes up early? So there are two questions regarding this.
Yeah, okay, both good questions. We see in Mayapur, we have a Gurukul. So the small boys come for Mangalarti. So really, there's no restriction on age. We had a neighbor who, they have always taken their children to Mangalarti right from when they were infants. So we do see, yeah, so we do see that there are parents who immediately they follow this routine from a very young age. When we came to Mayapur, immediately we started going for Mangalarti. So it's just a matter of habit. It's not a big deal. Children are very flexible. So it is us who needs to change, really. Children will get used to it very quickly. If they're sleeping on time, they can wake up on time. It's all fun for them, if it's done in the proper way. So there's no bar of age. Yes, when the children are very young, they are disruptive. So what happened with me, I was taking my children to the temple for Mangalarti, and then I would stay in the temple for Darshanarti. So there's a gap between Mangalarti and Darshanarti when I would chant, and my elder daughter, she was about 10, she would also chant. But my younger one, who was 5, would be tired and, like you said, maybe disruptive. So we used to go to a place in the temple which was meant for Matajis, and my younger daughter would just sleep. You said, okay, you sleep. She would just sleep in my lap, and I would chant my rounds. We'd wake her up for Darshanarti. So if your children are waking up, they're very young, they are waking up for Mangalarti, that's very nice. If they want to take another nap, by all means, they can do it. Other children who uh, are not sleepy, they're really active, then let them engage in other things, get their homework done at that time. If you're engaging with other activities in the evening, like you're doing a preaching program in your house, so whatever is pending, you can do it in the morning after Mangal Aarti. There's so much time, or whatever else you need to do, keep them engaged. Yes, that would mean that you cannot do your own sadhana. So that's an important point, that if parents have the responsibility for their children, then something has to give. You have to plan your life in such a way that you do it when your children are otherwise engaged. If they're going to school, then you do it then. If you're homeschooling them, then you need to get up even earlier than your children and chant your rounds. Take some rest in the afternoon, or do it in the afternoon when you give them some other work to do. So yes, our sadhana will get disrupted with our children, but that's a sacrifice we have to make to get them in a regulated lifestyle, which is very important. It will really pay off in the long run. It's very useful.
Yes, Mataji. But Mataji, there are situations when the kids are somehow maybe the kids are too active, or maybe the kids are getting too easily bored and they don't enjoy. There's a fear that kids might turn out to be rebellious later. That why are you forcing us to wake up in the morning? Or sometimes this one objection, if a parent encounters a single objection from the side of the child, then there and then the parents should stop waking them up, or they should somehow or other encourage the child, because there is a fear of that the child becomes rebellious in future.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because that was part of my presentation, that you should not force. It's a very important principle of spiritual life. So how do we get them to do things if they refuse? By inspiring them and by explaining things to them. There are parents who wake up their children very early when they have exams, or they have to do some other activity, like they have to go for learning abacus and all. So, or they want to go to some fitness camp. So this is not such an unnatural thing. There are parents who do these things for other things because that's their priority. So we can tell the children that people all over the world do accept austerities. They may be doing it in a roundabout way, that they work till late and get up early. But people take up austerities. It's not such a strange thing. But we want to do it right. And you will see that when you get up in the morning, your mind is peaceful. Of course, this is for older children. So you're saying, that they shouldn't feel that they are forced. So if they are a little older and we are inspiring them, then we can tell them like this, that you yourself observe, you'll be able to chant better. Or even if you want them to start by just doing their schoolwork, then that's fine. Let them do it in the morning, just to get into the routine of getting up early. But don't force. How not force? You still get that thing done, but you discuss it in such a way that you convince them. This is preaching, and you have to preach to your family first. So you have to know what it is that will, inspire the child. And you have to see each child is different. Like my older daughter, she's dutiful. If I just tell her this is the right thing to do, she'll do it. Or some child, they just want to please their parents. So you can say, this will really make me happy. Why don't you try it? And chances are, if they try it a few times, they'll say, yeah, this is not a big deal, because it's a matter of habit. We are trying to give them positive habits. So somehow or the other, what is it? Yena kena prakarena. Somehow or the other, get them to do it till they are used to it. And then it will not be a big deal. But I agree, it should not be forced. So in this, there's a slight expertise which is required, that sometimes you alternate, sometimes you're a little firm, and then you are explaining things to them. But somehow or the other, if you get them to do it few times, then you can say, see, it's not so hard. And well, it's, you don't want to do too much altogether, so it has to be gradual. If these are things that it's best if we inculcate it from a young age, all these things. If when they are younger, because they're more accepting, they just do. Like my younger daughter, I was telling her that, remember, you were so young, you were 5 years old, and we would get up, take bath, and even when it was cold, we would wear heavy jackets and go to temple. She was so young, but they're more accepting at that time. They just do it because that's what the mom is doing. They're not going to stay alone at home if mom is going to Mangal Aarti. So um, do not force. Do try to convince them, and be strong in your own conviction. If you feel this is the right thing, you will find a way to convince your children nicely. Do not force them. Be more loving, be more encouraging about that thing. It will help.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you for explaining it so well. Mataji, there is a question there are two questions regarding if a parent has two kids to manage. So sometimes the elder one has different ways to engage himself in Krishna consciousness, but the younger one needs your more time. And if the
Yes.
younger one is too small, so how to manage both the children simultaneously. And the second thing is how to manage the sibling rivalry, if you can give some tips for that too.
Yeah, so that is a challenge. It's really a challenge when children are at different stages. But somehow or the other, if you can go beyond that, it'll come to a point where they're both mature enough, similar ages. But at that time, well, the older one will have to be given more responsibility. And a good way of doing it is also to get the older one to teach the younger one. This is what they do in Gurukuls traditionally, that the older students teach the younger ones. So that's really nice, because that also helps with sibling rivalry, which is your other question. That if you have this relationship, then there will be respect built up from the younger child towards the older child, and the older child will have this sense of responsibility. So instead of giving the older child something and finding that the younger one is disrupting, at some point also give the older child responsibility to engage with the younger child positively. Like, why don't you draw something for him, and the other child will color it. And that disruptive age is usually for a few years, so you do have to juggle it a bit. At that time, give the older child more work that he can do with little supervision, while you can engage with the younger one. It's also a good idea to get help. If you can get some mothers together when you're doing these activities, so that's nice, because one mom can be with the younger children and one can be with the older one. So that's something which is missing in our communities often, that we try to do it in this shell, but traditionally that's not how families were. There were always grown-ups who were looking after the babies, and then you can engage with the slightly older children. So we want to bring that joint family culture, that try to take each other's help. And if you're not surrounded by devotees, take help of your neighbors. Tell them, I'll engage your children in positive things. This will help develop their personality. And like, get help of whoever you can. You can give them your positive association, encouragement, and in that way the children will be engaged. And sibling rivalry, well, again, just discuss the wonderful examples from scripture about how the siblings always have respect for elder, and the elder one has to be responsible for the younger one. So always try to stress these 2 points, that it's very good to stress service attitude. If everybody in the family is serving, then automatically problems of disruption, rivalry goes down. Have a rooster where everybody is doing some service, keep the children busy positively, then there will be less fights amongst them. So that's good. And sometimes I find that my daughters gang up against us, so that's positive for them because they're bonding in a nice way, and they'll put up their points that, oh, we feel this, and then we have a discussion. So sometimes deliberately we put them in a situation where they both get together and they can uh, feel that they have a point of view different from the parents, and then we can have a discussion on it. So encourage the siblings to be together, and again, doing a lot of things together as a family helps, because these days our families are such that children have their own peer group. That becomes important, her friends, and the younger one has her own friends, and then the sisters don't, or the brothers don't have that much in common. But if the main thing is your family and then the friends come, so they'll automatically grow closer to each other. So it's a very valuable thing. If you have more children, it can really work in your favor, because the children can encourage each other. And in my experience, you just train the eldest and it automatically follows. The younger ones, they know this is to be done. Okay, 16 rounds, she's doing it, she's a child, I can do it. Or reading Prabhupada's books. So in our case, we just had to convince our elder one, and younger one, she may protest a little bit, but she knows that this is the right thing to do. So it really helps. It helps. So by all means, have lots of children. Don't be afraid of sibling rivalry. It's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. Just encourage them to be more loving. And really resolve disputes. I mean, don't just ignore it that, बच्चे हैं, लड़ाई झगड़े तो होते हैं. No, this is not the standard. It's become like this now that, oh, it's not a big deal. It is big deal. In families, there would not be this kind of attitude. There has to be respect for the person, the child who's elder, and he has to take responsibility for the younger one. Give them responsibility that ये खेलने जा रहा है, तुम उसका ध्यान रखना, like that. You have to give the elder one responsibility. Then you'll see the relationship will be different.
Thank you so much for those interesting tips, Mataji. There is another important question that how to manage, like you said, that the mother should at least be with the child or sleep with the child and manage things with the child. But if the mother is working, then it becomes tough for her, even tougher to manage things and to impart those Krishna conscious values. So if you can give some tips for the working ladies.
Yeah. Again, good question. Many of us, many Matajis do find themselves in this position. So again, do the best you can. Try not to take too much stress where your work is concerned, especially when your children are younger. So So try to give them, try to have at least some time of the day, what they say quality time. I do believe that quantity time is required for children, but if all you have is little time, then make the best of it. Try to disengage from your work. Let something slide. What can be done? I mean, if you want to be the best at your work, and you want that, when you come home, everything has to be perfect at home, then naturally children will be neglected. So if you're a parent, if you have children, give that as a very important priority in your life. So I would suggest that try not to be, even if you're working, try not to be very ambitious. Try to do the minimum that you can. If you have a 9 to 5, stick to 9 to 5. If it means that you're not getting promoted, if you really don't need the money, manage with it. Also, I strongly advocate Mataji's to not have full-time work. If that's possible, try to take up a part-time responsibility, try to take up work from home. It may seem like a lot that, oh, as just I have to look after the children, and if I'm working from home, but if you can manage it somehow, it will help. Even if you are working, you can at least supervise what the children are doing. At least you are there when they come back, and little things like that. So I would strongly advise. It's a very difficult situation. If mother is working, it is very difficult to implement these things. That's a fact. And I'm not going to mince my words about it and say that, whatever situation you are in, no, it's difficult. So my advice would be that try to simplify your life. If you can, manage with less, manage with one income. Or if you must go to work, like I said, take less responsibilities, do the minimum you can. When I was working in HCL, I was not even married, but I was, everybody in my team knew I would leave at 5. If there's a deadline, and I would work very hard. When I was in office, of course, I would give it, whereas people are like, just wasting their time. So you work smart, you do put in the hours, but you leave. So that was my principle, and it was like, take it or leave it. And mostly if you're good at your work, they will accept these terms and conditions. So the best working ladies can do is try to get out of that working life, or if you can't, then do the minimum you can at work and give time to your children. There's no other way. So not to be very, what is it, advertising my book, but I write about a lot of these issues in my book. It's related to parenting, particularly from the woman's point of view. So I would encourage devotees to kindly take a look at it, because it has a lot of research which I have conducted because this is the way of life in Western countries. And what are the lessons we can learn from there? So I researched, and I found that there's a trend towards women in countries like Sweden, where they have the epitome of feminism. They want to work part-time. They have the option, they have the encouragement. The father can take paternity leave instead of the mother taking maternity leave. But you'll find women take it. They don't want the father to take the paternity leave. So things like that. There are many issues that I discuss in the book related to motherhood, women working. So for a more detailed discussion, I encourage you to read it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for enlightening all of us, and for covering all such important, useful tips for all the parents here. Just some final conclusive words of wisdom for us, that practically, like, it becomes tough to always practice what we preach to our kids. As you said, that it is inspiring for the kids to see our struggle also, when they are seeing that we are also trying to strive and improve. But how to inspire them when we, like you said, in terms of technology, like if somebody can afford it, if they have maximum of the technologies and opulences available at his place, to engage them in Krishna consciousness. will that be an ironical situation for the child to see that the parents are having the best of facilities? Maybe the parents are engaging them in Krishna consciousness only. So it sometimes feels that are we practicing what we are preaching, or like are we being duplicious?
Yes, it's a good point. Using everything in Krishna's service, having opulent life, but we are using it for Krishna's service. It's a tricky thing. Not everybody is able to manage to do that, because the opulence by itself brings with it, responsibility, and it influences one's mind. So very exalted devotees like Janak Maharaj, or Maharaj Pratap Rutra, they are able to handle this, that you have opulence and then you use it in Krishna's service. Mostly devotees want to simplify, simplify, simplify. So that's a tricky thing. And in fact, that's the reason we moved to Mayapur, quite frankly, because my husband had a very successful career, and we were engaging in preaching very actively. Everything was going fine. But then you are in that lifestyle where you have like a 4-bedroom house. Yeah, okay, it is used for visiting devotees, and internally the house itself is not, crystal chandeliers and all. But still, when you're living that kind of life, you are going to a supermarket and picking up 100 things. Your children are in a peer group where they need to wear presentable clothes. And we made that choice. We said, no, we want our children to be very simple. And that has to be internal and external. So my husband quit at the age of 36. He retired and we came to Mayapur. So we're living in a very different situation now, but it's blissful. So this is practical. You show to your children that if you simplify, it works. It really works. They are the happiest they have been, because my daughter was going to a Karmi school. Now she's going to a school with devotees, and the lifestyle itself, there's nothing missing. It's wonderful. It's like greenery. It's like fresh air, and so many nice things. So it's a tricky thing to be able to hold that balance, where we think that it's okay, we are using everything in Krishna's service, because you have to be very elevated for that. And again, like I said, children see through it. So um, I would say, both internally and externally, please simplify your life. It will benefit you spiritually, and it will have a huge impact on your children's life. So I really want to inspire devotees that they need to think about this sooner rather than later. Not that work, work, work till you are like 70 and then we retire and we go to the holy town. No, why not? Why not sooner rather than later? Please simplify your life. It will really help. It will help.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much for your association and valuable time. We are so grateful to Krishna to bless us with such live good examples from whom we can learn and actually get inspired to follow this principle in our life.
Please
So
bless
on
us
behalf of
that we can actually live what we are aspiring to live for.
You're already setting such a nice example, Mataji and Prabhuji, both of you. On behalf of the entire school team and all the devotees present today, I would like to thank you from the core of my heart. And I request you to please accept our second request of again someday being available and giving us your wonderful association again.
Thank you so much. It will be my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the discussion. I'm very happy to see such sincere devotees. So many wonderful questions. It's really nice. It's nice. So how do I give my content? Oh, sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to say. You asked about how we are not perfect. I just thought I will answer that, because Prabhu pointed out, he's reading the section on Dhruv Maharaj, because he's going to teach soon. And he pointed out how Srila Prabhupada says that even if one of his disciple perfects his life, he will carry the Guru. So even if our children perfect their life, it will benefit us. And we see that Suniti gave this instruction to Dhruv Maharaj that you just go to the forest and engage in austerity. So she was not doing it herself at that point. Clearly, she was devotional, pious to give such an instruction. But we should not think that we are imperfect, so how can we give instruction to our children? No, it is the responsibility of the Guru that I may be imperfect, but the instruction is not, because it's coming from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So we can tell our children this. You can see I'm struggling, but I want that we should both aspire for this, or we should all as a family aspire for something better. And especially you have the advantage. You're young. You're from the beginning, you have been given these things. So there's no harm in being spiritually ambitious for our children, expecting them to be better than us, and telling them as much that why not do better than us. So just like people inspire their children, you should do materially better than us. तुम तो बेटा हमसे भी आगे निकल जाओ. So we want कि हमारे बच्चे spiritually हमसे बहुत बहुत आगे निकल जाएं. So don't feel hesitant that, oh, I'm not that good, or I have so many anarthas from my past life. We tell our children, like, look, we are struggling because we were brought up in a different way. You shouldn't be. So we should inspire them and not be discouraged. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Madhaji. Thank you so much. That's so true and so inspiring. Madhaji, yes, I wanted to ask that if devotees want to get in touch with you for their, like, maybe some further queries, or like if
Yes.
they want to get in touch with the Ministry of Education, then
Yes,
how
sure.
if you can
Yeah, so
give us
I'll
some-
just give my WhatsApp number. And so that, yes, you can by all means get in touch. I'll be very happy. Yeah. So I think it's on the chat now.
Yes, Madhaji.
Yeah, so this is my number, and you can get in touch with me, and if required, we can exchange emails, whatever. But this number is handy.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji, once again.
Thank you, Vidyavati Mataji. It's been wonderful talking with all of you. Hare Krishna.
And thank you to all the parents for being present with us today and for asking such important and valuable questions. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.